Good morning, noon, or night, ladies and gentlemen, gifted animals, boys and girls. Welcome to the Crypto Conversion Podcast, joined again by Matt and Connor. Guys, it's been a great week for me. How's it been going for you?
Great week.
Can't complain. Can't complain.
Yeah, never can complain. So it's kind of crazy how these episodes start with us having conversations that we should be recording, but it's just how the ebbs and flows of this goes. So we'll do our best to try to come back to that in the episode. So let's start with some news this week, and I guess I wanted to start. So one of my favorite crypto news sources, channels, guy from the Coin Bureau, he came out with a YouTube short early in the week talking about Nigeria moving to CBDC for their economy in terms of being able to transfer money. And we all know how we feel about CBDCs, but it seems like that's where a lot of economies are trying to go. I guess I just didn't expect to see that. I don't want to call it primitive, but that, it feels like a move that Nigeria wants to make to get out of their high inflationary currency situation, as a lot of those countries unfortunately have, like Nigeria. You see in the pictures of somebody with a wheelbarrow of money going to get a loaf of bread, and that it's just kind of a weird thing that we, despite all the inflation that we have in our economy, we don't have it to the extent that they do. So essentially everybody is being suppressed from taking money out of their bank accounts in Nigeria. So if you have like a couple grand in your bank account, you can only take $40, essentially $40 a day. I'm not sure how that works from a conversion standpoint to the USD to what the fiat is in Nigeria, but it can't be that great. Imagine if we could only withdraw $40 a day. So when things like this happen, and the amount of technology that people have access to today, all of a sudden Bitcoin is making a huge adoption in Nigeria, and Bitcoin exploded all the way up to 68K in Nigeria. So I'm not sure if you're like an arbitrage guy, like SBF said that he bought Bitcoin in the United States and then sold it in Japan. Like, could you have bought in Bitcoin in the United States and sold it in Nigeria for a profit? That would have been, I mean, shoot, that I don't know. Like, I wouldn't have done that. That would make me feel terrible taking advantage of an economy like that. But it's just something to think about. It's like, man, it's just so sad that people don't have access to their money, and we're told we need to be able to trust banks. And I just feel like this is one of those situations where it's getting more and more pressing that we need something different, or people in certain types of economies need something different if they're not going to be able to access their funds. So I'm not sure what you all thought about that story, but I was just, it's kind of crazy to me because I've never experienced anything to that extent, I guess. And I don't know if I will ever.
What you're saying now, I think is a good point, in that there's you see a lot of people buying crypto in, and I don't know if it's a huge number or a huge percentage, but you see people buying crypto in countries where they either have a rapidly devaluing fiat currency or they lack certain banking infrastructure, and that's because they need it, right? It almost doesn't make sense when you tell your neighbor, you tell your friend about like, no, get out of the banks, and buy Bitcoin. They're like, no, the banks are fine here. Like our currency is, has reached new highs relative to other currencies. And so, I've And it's interesting. There's kind of this technology leaping that gets done in like in Africa. They never had landline telephones. They just, when they adopted telephones, we already had cell phones, so they just went to cell phones. And so it's kind of cool to see, that they're like, oh, now the infrastructure is here for us to, take control of our own money. Let's hop on that. Let's just jump right to that. I don't know what banking infrastructure looks like in Nigeria, but because the technology exists and is usable, and there's this global network of people transacting, they can hop on, they can get some Bitcoin and start using that, which is
And
great.
and Matt, on a second note, in Africa, they were already using so you know how with the track phone you buy minutes for it, you load the minutes on the phone. They were already using minutes as a means of bartering or transferring value amidst peer to peer at that level. So cell phone companies in Africa hold kind of a privatized financial network where if I need something but I don't have fiat accessible, I can transfer you some cell phone minutes and you'll get me whatever, what I need and from that you have. So there is already a system very much like what we envision Bitcoin to be like um, already established in Africa. So that's something that I always found fascinating about the African economy. And don't quote us on this. We're not experts in it. I'm only speaking from what I have seen in news stories and articles and reading about this stuff. But it's fascinating how that has worked in that economy. So to speak. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on it, Connor, but it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious actually about the Nigerian CBDC, like what kind of form it takes. And I haven't looked into this. I would be curious to go back and check it out. Um, but I imagine it's not blockchain based.
No.
I think it would have made some news if it was. So yeah, I'm just what does this look like and exactly how restrictive is it for the Nigerians? As far as I know, that's the first CBDC that we've seen launched. I mean,
Technically, China has one, I think. I think there's a digital yuan.
Digital yuan, yeah.
digital wand. Okay.
Yeah. But no, so the big reason why people aren't able to get their money out of the bank is because if Nigeria had a bank run, there wouldn't be enough
For
in
sure.
the
Yeah.
liquidity pool for them to even set up the CBDC to be backed. So it's almost like the government is using what's in the banks to hedge against the CBDC. I'm not sure what this looks like for the people of Nigeria. I am not familiar with the whole infrastructure there. I know it's not the greatest from what I've seen from afar, but it's just kind of an interesting story, and you can find all kinds of stories about this. I'm looking at Forbes right now, and it's just kind of like if Forbes is running this story, and it's gotten pretty mainstream, which is interesting.
I think there is a narrative that Bitcoin is somewhat of a hedge against government corruption. I wouldn't hold that to be always true, but you even look in the U.S. with the Canadian trucker protest, and these things with COVID, even these things just kind of creating a need or a use case maybe for Bitcoin, or there's some uncertainty about the survival of the government or whatnot, and that's kind of driving people to crypto. I think there's definitely that narrative though.
Yeah.
For
Just
sure.
one comment before we leave the Nigeria thing. I did look it up because you were talking about inflation, and they don't have. There are definitely countries that have very high inflation rates. Nigeria isn't that high. I mean, still much
Okay.
higher than the U.S., but kind of averaging anywhere from 8 to 20% per year, which again is a lot, but it's not. It's not 70% every year. It's not definitely not the highest.
So it's not Brazil.
Not no.
Do you think, okay, off topic, do you think the US dollar has anything to do with some of this?
I'm not sure, right? We could say the U.S. dollar is the global reserve currency because that's,
Yeah,
how international
I love
transfers
quotations. Yeah.
are I don't know, whatever name they want to give it. And I've definitely been hearing and seeing things about there being a dollar shortage.
Hmm.
That it's harder to find dollars. I think there was a story about a Middle Eastern country, making an agreement with China to, settle in yuan instead of
Yeah, Iraq.
dollars, right? Or okay, Iraq was it? Yeah, and so I don't know. I wonder if there's a shortage of dollars. I think especially with and it's almost funny, right? In crypto terms, right? The Treasury is putting out these bonds with high interest rates, so they're stake your dollars for this APR, and then everybody locks up the dollars, and now the circulating supply is lower, and it drives up this demand. So I that's my understanding. Again, I'm not a macro economist, but I can only relate it to crypto terms.
For sure. No, I
What's
get
going
it.
on?
And I know that and obviously like everything we say here, not financial advice, entertainment purposes only, but it's like it's just interesting to just think about like why I mean, I understand why Iraq went their way. There's geopolitical reasons probably, but there's also just like, hey, we have an economy to run here, and the United States came in and blew us up, and we're still rebuilding a lot of what we had. So if there's not enough US dollars around to help us sustain whatever it is that we're trying to improve upon, we have to find value somewhere else. So, and China has made it through the Belt and Road Initiative very favorable for some of these struggling countries to have things like ports, supply chains, economic infrastructures, manufacturing businesses. So I get it, but it's
Yeah,
fascinating.
I don't really fully understand either. Like maybe I just don't know like foreign policy or foreign trade too much. But like,
Hit
was there
me.
anything preventing Iraq other than Iraq's own policies from transacting with yuan? I mean,
No.
besides the fact that of the petrodollar, you have to buy oil with USD. I don't really know that there's any uh, global initiatives or incentives to force countries to transact with USD. Otherwise, is there?
Don't quote me on this, but I don't think the United States buys oil from Iraq. I think that it's because of something with Saudi Arabia. There's a lot of things that go into that sort of stuff with the petrodollar that I'm not 100% privy to.
Well, I just
But
mean that
yeah,
the petrodollar just means that anybody who's buying oil has to buy with U.S. dollars. That's the agreement. But I
well,
don't
I
think there's
think
any.
that's going to start changing.
Well, it already has started changing.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's anything preventing Iraq from, say, transacting other trade with yuan. So was it just Iraq's policy that they only did it with U.S. dollar because probably it was because other currencies are uncertain. So they wanted something that was relatively stable to kind
I
of
think
regulate
I
their trade.
Connor, I think there was because of the influence the United States had over Iraq, overthrowing the government, instituting new government systems. When you institute new government systems, you're also instituting new financial and economic systems.
Yeah.
And I think that the United States presence in the Middle East has kind of backtracked a little bit, with the Afghanistan and everything. And I think that has incentivized those economies to go for those opportunities that they might not have had the United States been as influential as they have been, back in the early 2000s. So
No doubt
I'm
there
not
was,
I'm
no
not
doubt there was
100% an
probably
expert.
social pressure there, but I don't think they broke any like trade deals or anything.
No, not that I know of yet, but who knows? Breaking news coming up soon, potentially. So, yeah, I don't know.
So this is actually a good transition to what we wanted to talk about today, which is, as we're talking about this government corruption and the way they run economies and fiat currencies in general, right? How do we decentralize ourselves? How could we achieve that? How does one kind of remove themselves as much as possible from kind of this financial systems, yeah. So, Brandon, did you want to start us off with a definition?
Yeah, so I know this is really cheesy, but I feel like a lot of times these terms get thrown around in crypto, like, decentralization, peer-to-peer, transferable. And I know I gave some really blanket ones. There's other terms too, but we hear these adjectives that describe crypto, and sometimes I feel like we don't necessarily understand the core of the word. And it's kind of interesting as I look up the word decentralization on Google, how the relevance of the word has increased exponentially the past 10 years. I think that crypto probably has a little bit to do with it. I think other industries do as well. But so the definition of decentralization is the transfer of control of an activity or organization to several local offices or authority rather than a single one. So that's kind of interesting, I guess, from the definition standpoint.
I think
Yeah.
etymologically the word itself, right? It's you can't decentralize if you haven't centralized, right? It's an
Exactly.
action against, it's a response to,
But
centralization.
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really know the word until I
Oh,
got
okay.
into crypto. Honestly, like I hadn't really heard it thrown around.
Mm-hmm.
And now I hear it. I hear it thrown around all the time. Like I hear blockchain thrown around so much more now to describe things. The same way I hear decentralization thrown around more to describe things. So I think it's a cryptoization of vernacular that's kind of making this type of language acceptable in conversations now.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for those of us that are already in crypto. Like, no duh.
Sure, it definitely has a connotation, right? Same
Yeah.
way, like I don't know why I was thinking about this earlier, but as I don't know, all Christians, but as Catholics in particular, we say a layman is like somebody who's not a priest,
Yeah.
and like,
Not a cleric. Yeah.
but layman means, it could mean anybody who's not trained or certified in a field, like it's funny. Anytime I hear someone else say it, I'm like, well, of course they're a layman, and it's like, oh no, never mind. Yeah.
Or vocation.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Vocation
A
has
great
that
one.
double entendre too. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So
Sorry, we just Catholicked out there,
sure.
Connor.
Yeah, I'm lost. Nah, shit. I know these terms. I'm comfortable with them.
No, I'm just kidding. I know you know. So, with a decentralized, how do we live decentralized? I guess is what I'm asking. Like, if we were to say like, so obviously like Coinbase makes it so easy for us to buy crypto from our bank accounts, and they talk about decentralization and all this stuff, but that's not truly decentralized. Like, they know that you're buying that. Your bank knows that you're moving money into Coinbase to buy an asset there, and Coinbase knows that you bought this asset, and then yeah, you can move it to whatever cold storage you have, but Coinbase still has that record of that proof of purchase that you bought it there. And I don't know, it just, there's a lot of different ways I feel like to go about decentralization, but it's hard. It's not an easy thing to do if you were to intentionally try to do it, which is a conversation that we've been talking about at least, because it just seems like more and more the bank wants to know what you're doing. Venmo places restrictions on how much money you can move from one account to another. I think it's like a $600 limit now. I don't know. I don't know specifically.
I don't think they restrict it. I think they report it if you
Yeah.
do that
Okay.
much. So they'll report that to the IRS. So you can't, hide your transactions that are, yeah.
Sure. So I guess the question that Connor and I were talking about last week is, if I'm just a regular person that is working, out in the world, doing my due diligent American economic laborer, like just making my paycheck, how would I be decentralized? Because it feels like every employer now pushes for direct deposit, which makes sense because it's easy and the infrastructure is built up. But what if I didn't want to be a part of that, like that consistent thing that we've just become so accustomed to? What if I wanted to not have a bank account and just wanted to go off the grid essentially, but I still needed to make money in some way, shape, or form? Like I'd have to basically just do it with just cash, right?
I feel like some of these. I mean, talking about the cryptoization of terms and words, I feel like we're kind of like we're combining a lot of things into decentralization that maybe are not necessarily part of that word, like anonymity.
Yeah.
You know, just this idea of trustlessness or transparency, and we kind of like combine all of that stuff into decentralization, because that's how those are the types of things that we associate with crypto and with blockchain, and so you can't necessarily have one without the other. So I don't know. I mean, I don't really think that there's anything particularly not decentralized about transferring a paycheck to your bank account or even to a Coinbase wallet. It's just that everybody know. I mean, it's knowable. You're not anonymous doing it. That's a tracked transaction.
Well, I do think it's centralization. I think part of the question is, how do I like divorce myself? How do I remove myself from relying on central entities to do things? So cash, right. I don't need anybody to tell me I can or can't pay cash, right? Everybody has to accept it. It's legal tender, right?
And that's something that a lot of people don't, really like fully comprehend. It's like cash is actually very decentralized. The actual hard cash itself, it's once you're holding it, like, there's nobody who can freeze the wallet, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's anonymous too, right? You can't really, the guy sees you paying for it, but they're going to see you paying for it, whether you do it in Bitcoin or cash or anything. But, he can't go back to your pocket and say, oh, it looks like he still has, $10,000 in his pocket, the way you could, if I sent you a Bitcoin transaction, you can say, wow, you still have that much in your wallet. Yeah.
How often do you guys see people pay in cash today?
Not very often.
I've got some friends who do it.
Okay.
Do you?
I know people who they just like to have cash on hand, and so like we go to a restaurant and they pay in cash.
I've known people like that, for sure.
I was only like that when I was in my early 20s and would go to the bars. I found cash to be way more easier to operate in a bar going out, because I had this in the back of my head that if I had $10 bills, because everybody always tries to pay for things in 20s or credit cards, the bartender's going to come to me first because I have a 10, and she needs more 10s than she does 20s to break change. So I was trying.
Well, because of inflation, that's a 20 now. You need to have a 20.
I know, but it's just I thought it was helpful, because when I bartended, I always was, or worked at the gas station, I always ran out of 10s the fastest. So I thought I was doing people favors by
You're arbitraging
in 10s. Exactly. Yeah. But I don't know. I just thought that was a little funny side note. So sorry to get off topic, but since we were talking about what people use cash for, I was like, oh, that's what I was trying to do back in the day.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to think about cash, because cash is peer to peer. I give you cash,
right,
and you give me the thing, right? And so if we rely on a credit card, like that's a centralized network, that like when I put my credit card on it, the notification goes to the centralized network, they approve the purchase, and then it goes through, then they receive their payment. A debit card, it goes through the bank, right? Same thing, centralized entity. And so, so cash is a good example of decentralization, makes us think about the ways that, everything else we do is centralized. And then we kind of mentioned crypto is also like that, right? Not everybody accepts it, right? But if somebody does, I could send Bitcoin, or anything else and say, again, that is peer to peer.
Right.
I know we were talking earlier about like Strike, incorporating the Lightning Network. I don't know if they'll, as a centralized entity, deny somebody from using it. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder if,
Yeah, I mean, they definitely could, because once you're passing through the Strike ecosystem, there's that fiat off ramp to immediately pay the grocer, right? Or whoever it is that you're paying with your Lightning Network Bitcoin. So they could definitely blacklist you from their platform. But yeah, so I mean, on the question of how do you live like a decentralized life, is the question is really like, how do you live like a peer-to-peer life and not have to rely on any centralized eyes, watching what you're doing, or necessarily kind of controlling what you're allowed to do with what you have, I guess. That's kind of the question, right? How do you live a peer-to-peer life?
Well, I think, okay, so good example of this. A lot of immigrants have to do that. Like, they have to get paid in cash, and you get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, but I think part of that's because they're getting paid under the table, right?
Right,
Like,
that's
True.
what he's
sure,
saying.
they
I
are
know,
avoiding the
but-
law. If that's
but-
what we're trying to do.
No,
right?
actually, I
they're
did
living
tell-
as decentralized as it gets.
It's true. Well, they're living off the grid. I don't know. I just don't necessarily think that's necessarily decentralized. But yeah, they
Okay.
are living off the grid. They're living a very peer-to-peer, trustless in life, I guess. But
Sure.
I did mention to you that I know somebody who, her brother
Sure.
gets paid in Bitcoin, and he goes to the ATM to get his cash every week.
Okay.
But I'm fairly sure that he's getting paid under the table because of that. But yeah, that's a very peer-to-peer existence.
I am curious. I was thinking about this question. Would you mind, and this is for both of you, would you mind getting paid in Bitcoin? Would you prefer it? Would you mind it? I don't know. I personally think it's kind of too volatile, like this year I want my salary to be 3 Bitcoin, but this year I want my salary to be like 6 Bitcoin, right? 'Cause it's gone down.
Yeah.
I don't know, and not that they set things like that, but I don't know. Thoughts on that?
I would prefer it, but I'm also a very private person. I don't like people watching what I'm doing, So, and I'm at a point in my life where I can kind of accept that risk a little bit, probably more than somebody with a family could.
Yeah, I'll speak to that being the family guy here. So I feel like I could navigate it. 2 or 3 years ago, when I started out in crypto, I would have been a little more skittish towards the idea. But after meeting people like you, Matt, and other people in cryptocurrency, I think I could handle the swings. I would still have to make sure that I had enough cash, though, in reserves just to be able to do certain things, though. Like I would still need to have a quality budget set aside for a rainy day in case the markets went kaput like they did, what was it, like last summer. So there would have to be there would definitely need to be some checks and balances placed, but I think I could handle it. Say like, I don't know, like I move like 25% of my paycheck into fiat just so I have enough to like afford, house, whatever my family needs, groceries. So I think there's a way to do it, but I wouldn't encourage the everyday person who hasn't been in crypto long enough to do it. Matt, what about you in your situation?
He said no.
Yeah. What'd you say?
I said, you said no, didn't you?
Yeah, I don't think I would. I think
You're flat out no? Really? You're flat out no.
It's okay. So there's two sides to this. I remember, and I was thinking about it because there was, I think, a football player, pro football player, maybe a couple of years ago when
Offensive
Bull
lineman
Run.
for the Carolina Panthers. Yep.
There you go. You got
Top
it. Yeah.
signal.
And he said,
Top signal.
he said that he wanted to be paid in Bitcoin. And so he was paid in Bitcoin. And I just remember like comments on that. And someone, people were like, well, why not? Like, you could just get paid in fiat and then buy Bitcoin. Right.
Exactly.
Sure. There's a fee on the exchange to buy it. I think I'm at that point in life, but I don't know if there's greater adoption and we're all on the Lightning Network, doing things like, sure. I'd love to get, that would make more sense, but I don't know. I could say, my paycheck comes in and I'm going to put 10, 20% into Bitcoin, but I don't know. I think I would prefer that rather than getting paid in Bitcoin and saying, I'm going to put 10, 20% in cash, and that's, I don't know, maybe part of that's risk, part of that's utility, I guess,
I think
my paycheck doesn't go all towards investments, right? I need to use it. So
I think this is actually a really good point that you're bringing up, Matt, because the question is like, how can you live a decentralized life? I think first you have to ask why.
Yeah.
Like, what is the point of this pro football player getting his paycheck in Bitcoin? There's really no conceivable point, like you said, because you can just get it in cash and then you can buy the Bitcoin.
I think he was African, Connor, which I think he must have been sending money to family or something.
Sure,
just to clarify.
Right. But again, I mean, there was what's really the benefit to him besides the public spectacle of it? Because you can still just buy Bitcoin and then send it. Right.
No, I think that's good. I think, utility, right? I'm going to spend most of my paycheck on things that I need to use cash for. If he's going to spend a big chunk on things that he needs Bitcoin for, I do think that makes sense. And, if maybe somebody also, talking about immigrants, if somebody has a hard time getting a bank account, right, it might be better to have something that can be transacted, globally or via a network than having a big wad of cash. I don't know. I do see that. And so you're right. You got to look at the reasons. You got to look at the reasons why somebody would do it. And I buy Bitcoin as kind of a hedge against corruption, right? If my bank account got frozen, I still have, at least some Bitcoin, not like some Bitcoins, but some of a Bitcoin, right? That I've got that in reserves that can, I can survive on that for a minute. Well,
Well, I mean, my real point though is like, you really do have to ask yourself that question, because if you're getting Bitcoin and then you're putting it straight to an exchange and you're buying stable coins so that you can basically live your, life, then you're not really getting any real utility out of the Bitcoin aspect of it. So, I mean, you have to ask yourself, like, why do I want to live a decentralized life? In most cases, either A, you really don't trust the government, and you think that fiat is potentially going to crash or whatever it is, and so you're hedging yourself with as much Bitcoin as possible. Or two, you really don't want any prying eyes on your money at all, in which case you're not going to buy stable coins on a centralized exchange with it anyway. You're just going to take the risk for what it's worth. Because otherwise, Bitcoin is too volatile to really want to get your paycheck in. And then, the next day Bitcoin dropped like, 10% and you just lost 10% of your paycheck. Like, that's absurd. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, even in the case of that football player, like, sure, maybe it's a little more convenient for him if he's going to spend most of it in Bitcoin. But again, I just don't really see the benefit of potentially taking a 10% or who knows what percentage drop in your income or your paycheck just because, you took it in Bitcoin and the next day.
For the record, Russell Okung put half of that 13 million in fiat, so only half of it was in crypto. Just to clarify, I looked it up while we were here, so so not as much as we thought, but still, that's still a lot of Bitcoin.
So if we say Bitcoin is more of a sound money, right? Like gold, right? It might be nice to be paid in gold, right? We can, hope that that's going to retain its value, right? Like that might be a similar question. Would you like to get paid in gold bars or gold coins?
Boomer rocks.
And maybe you do want to get paid, but because there's this idea, and so I don't know. So I like that idea of like half and half, right? I would put 10, 15, 20% of my paycheck into a retirement account to grow and things anyway, right? If I could, instead of having to deal with an exchange, if I could say, hey, take out, send me 10% of my paycheck in Bitcoin to this wallet, that might be good, right? To see it as an investment or as something that's going to retain value over time.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the real answer for me is why I would want to live a decentralized existence, and why I would also take my money in Bitcoin is because I really don't want prying eyes being able to potentially freeze my accounts in the future or even know what I have. Like, I don't want, that kind of oversight of my belongings, my paycheck. I don't want people to know. So because of that, I would take my money in Bitcoin, but I also wouldn't take it through some sort of centralized entity. I think a lot of salaries are regulated in such a way that I don't think that I could probably receive my paycheck in a way that is totally anonymous.
Sure.
At least through U.S. companies.
So
in most cases, no, I wouldn't. I would just rather take cash or whatever and buy my Bitcoin elsewhere. But,
okay, so let's do an exercise. Let's play how can I live completely decentralized, from how I get paid to just how I exist financially. So, all right, so starting off, like, I don't think you can be a regular 40-hour-a-week employee. I think you need to be something like a farmer, and I think you need to have some land, and I think you need to you need to be doing crops, livestock, chickens, eggs. You need to be doing something like that, that you're providing value to the sense that you can be your own business or be a business that others go to. So then you have to operate in a system where people are only paying you in Bitcoin, maybe Monero, or Litecoin if you're completely anonymous on those chains. Could you even do that with Ethereum?
yeah.
Okay, so any crypto basically, so long as you have a hardware wallet, right?
Even if you don't have a hardware wallet.
Yeah.
Oh,
They know where to
okay.
drop the address, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, you
sure.
can make a
Okay,
random
okay. And so then though comes the difficulty. How do I exchange for fiat and stuff? So we have what you pointed me in the direction of, not a sponsor of the show, but the Bitcoin company allows you to buy gift cards using Bitcoin for that bridge to whatever store you might be buying something from. So,
or just a Visa gift card, actually. You can even
Yeah,
just put
I
it
saw
straight on a
that.
Visa.
Yeah.
You saw that?
what?
I've heard of this site before. Yeah, you can get a
Okay.
Visa gift card too.
Yes, yeah.
I
So
got
You can
one.
spend anywhere. Yeah.
yeah, so that's a
Funny
good.
enough, using it, you only have 1 year to use the funds on it. Otherwise, you lose them.
Oh
Good to
wow.
know. I got to check all my Visa cards. No.
Yeah, I have a couple too from the
From getting
baby.
paid in
So
Bitcoin,
yeah, I
right?
got to use that up on some diapers. But anyway, yeah. So the Bitcoin company gives a really good way if you wanted to remain anonymous for like online purchases or going to big chains like fast food restaurants and stuff like that. Or if I want to, it's funny, I'm watching it. If I want to play Top Golf or take an Uber, you wouldn't be taking Ubers if you were living decentralized. But there's gift cards for it from the
Why
Bitcoin
not?
company. So
Yeah, why wouldn't you use Uber? That's a peer-to-peer network.
I feel like Brandon is like living off the grid, not relying on technology at all existence. That's his definition of decentralization.
Sure. So
I want to take it to the nth degree here. Like, if we're gonna live decentralized, let's get decentralized here. I'm
What
not
is
messing
decentralized?
around.
So part of this though is you could have right. So you don't have to have a farm in order to have a business where you sell stuff, right?
No, you could have
Anything where
you
you
can have a
sell
cabin
stuff.
in the woods and you're a lumberjack. Like there's a lot of ways to do this.
I could create a website. I could create a software. In order to purchase it, you need to send me Bitcoin, right? I can.
I'm sorry,
I can
everything
knit
gets
something. I don't
super
know.
colonial when I talk about this stuff. But anyway, so yeah, but like if you had a website, how could you do that? You could, I guess you could do it
It's
decentralized.
online. That's even better.
I really feel like we're struggling with like the definition of decentralization. I don't know.
I don't
I'm
know.
feeling.
I just feel like you need your own business and you have to only take in cash and crypto, and then in order to interact with the economy, you can only use those vehicles as well. Like you're not getting a credit card, you're not getting a bank account necessarily have a debit card. So I guess that's just how I've
Yeah,
imagined it.
decentralized.
I know that that's not the only way, and I could be wrong, and I know I'm wrong, but that's what it seems like to me, at least, is like, I don't know.
Well, go ahead, Matt.
Sorry, I just want to say something about the website thing. Like we literally talked about that last episode, right? Like these platforms that are trying to be a decentralized web, right? I can host my website on one of these platforms, right? And it's not like I'm, hosting on Amazon, right? If we want to say I'm decentralizing myself from that as well, right? Anyway, I go on, Connor.
You have to market the website, though.
No, they'll know. You got to market your farm. How do they know to find you? How do they know you take Bitcoin?
Well, how is marketing not decentralized though?
Exactly. I'm paying my peers, and they're walking around putting up flyers. You can't get more decentralized than that.
Okay, fair.
This is good. Connor, please.
I don't even know what the
Jump in.
discussion is at this point, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, I guess, again, like I said, this is kind of like the cryptoization of definitions and terms. But so we're wrapping into decentralized. Like, how can I live like totally private, like not sharing any private information about myself with any centralized entity? That's really your question, Branden, right?
Okay, actually, let me push back on this. And we were talking about this a little before the episode started. I do think there's a difference between decentralization and like atomization. I think you can decentralize, and in your definition you gave, you've said authority goes from a single centralized unit to local units, right? And so like I don't think you have to keep your farm private. I think everyone can know you have a farm, right?
Sure.
Like, and you could be the guy that has a farm, right? And I could be the guy that, and we were talking about this, I could run the Lightning Network node that everyone connects to and kind of transacts through, like we could have, we could set up our own little society and we have a group of people who are doctors and nurses and we know what they do and we know they take Bitcoin, and because we're all, in our little society using Bitcoin apparently, or cash, because why not? That's also decentralized. But what I'm saying? I think, and this is, I feel like I was trying to say this in one of the other episodes. It's about, in some regard, it's how can I use what I have and know and can do to help the people around me to make it more local, so they don't have to, call someone 5 states over for this. They can say, hey, I know a guy who can do that.
Yeah. Here's a criticism I've heard. I don't even remember where I heard this. Otherwise, I would attribute it. But somebody's criticism of Bitcoin or a crypto financial system is this idea of trustlessness, and that as Christians in Christianity, we're not really called to build a trustless society. We actually want to build trust in society, right? So why would we be spending all of our efforts into creating something that isn't built on this idea of trust between humans, which I think is actually a good point. I don't think it's necessarily a good point against crypto. I just think it's a good point in general. Like, we're not trying to create a system that means that there's no reliance on other people. It just means that when it comes to finances, that it can't be co-opted by forces that, would seek to censor us or to push us out of the system. And really, even when it comes to decentralization, like I'm not even totally fully like everything has to be decentralized. I support decentralization with crypto and with Bitcoin, particularly with financial currencies, because right now the system we have is censoring Christians, is blacklisting Christians, is freezing bank accounts, is doing a lot of things that's really pushing us out of the system. But if I'm really being honest, I would either support, given what we have right now, a fully decentralized system where nobody has the power to kind of wield, censorship against others, or I would support like a totally centralized system where I fully trust the person who's, at the epicenter. Like that person is not going to freeze my bank account and, shut down churches or whatever. Like I would trust that system ultimately more than I would probably trust a totally decentralized system. But
Yeah,
I don't really see.
I agree with you.
But I don't really see that we have the opportunity to make that happen. So I support Bitcoin given that. But I support Bitcoin for pragmatic reasons. I don't support Bitcoin in and of itself, Same with decentralization. I don't think that decentralization is an ultimate good.
No.
Yeah. And I mean, like, forget about my commune talk, prior. Like I was going full on like off the grid there. It's not, you don't need to do that, but
I think there's a lot of good things about
I do too.
self-sustenance and self-sustaining
And
lifestyle.
I guess
But I do think some
what I
people
was
take
saying
it
was
too
I
far.
think you need to have a business of some sort though, and to make it really worth your time. So that's where my head was at with it, is like, how can I create value for myself and those around me, ultimately, and my head went to natural resources. So yeah, but I agree with you, Connor. I would rather have a centralized entity that I could 100% trust. It was ironclad. I knew that there was always going to be value there. And if I can, and this is what I feel like so many Americans had done for the past, like, however long we've had what we have, like, and it's still very good in relationship to a lot of what the rest of the world has. But it's, we're starting to see cracks in the foundation. And who knows, they've been there longer than we've realized, but it's just one of those things. It's like, all right, we're in this bubble and it's just going to keep getting bigger. So, but yeah, I'd rather have a centralized entity I could trust more than having to be decentralized ultimately.
Well, I mean, here in this podcast, we recognize that to be necessarily true, right? Like the church is not a decentralized entity in the sense that like we rely on decentralized consensus to come up with truth, right? We don't. So we kind of naturally understand that.
Yeah, especially as Catholics, right? It's very centralized. There's a guy at the top. The whole churches, yeah.
And we surrender we surrender like to the clergy and to the bishop to make decisions over the diocese. Like our bishop just gave us dispensation to eat meat on St. Patrick's Day because he's Irish, and he's like, there's a lot of Irish people here, but that's not the case with every diocese. So it's kind of funny how that all operates, and in terms of the different locales and how we surrender some of that decision making. Obviously, we hope through the discernment of the Holy Spirit ultimately, but there is still a human decision being made.
Yeah, and so just to get back, I like what you said, that again, trustlessness is not like the ultimate good. Decentralization is not the ultimate good, and so I as humans, like, we're social creatures. Like, I don't think we could, flourish independently. Like, I don't think we can, if everybody walled themselves off and could self-sustain, I don't think we would flourish. I mean,
decentralization,
lockdowns and COVID, right? I mean, when everyone was trapped inside, things were bad, but I also, and trustlessness in how something is transmitted wirelessly, I think that's a good thing to have. But like, we have to have we have to trust people, right? I have to go to the restaurant and trust that they haven't poisoned my food. I have to, you have to trust a babysitter. There's no trustless way to say, you have to, yeah. And if we have any sort of peer-to-peer network, right? Any peer-to-peer, interactions, you need to, have some level of trust for people. And so I think it's good to know people. And I think, atomization versus decentralization. I think we can decentralize with a network of people, right? I trust all these people. We have the same common goal, the same mission. And, I think we can flourish together, whether it's on some commune or, in society. And I just have this network of people who are near me or even not near me. And I think you can, I don't know. I think you can decentralize. We can remove ourselves from relying on centralized entities because we can rely on each other, which is a good thing. I think it's good to be able to, recognize the things we can't do and the things that we can do and can do for others as well. So,
I was going to say the real question then is how can we live a life without big government and without big business? Because that's what peer-to-peer is, right?
And so, boy, you just opened up a can of worms, Connor.
Did I? I think that's maybe we've been beating around the bush a little bit this whole time, but that's really the question. Local communities, trusting local entities, people I actually know, someone I can put a face to, as opposed to kind of this faceless corporation or entity that doesn't seem to have my interests at heart.
Yeah, I don't know that we were beating around the bush. I think this is a good progression. I think it was good to play out the individualistic scenario and kind of work our way up. But no, it's hard. I don't think we can avoid big government, but and this was one of the talks Michael Matheson Miller at the conference. He was talking about the parallel polis, and you have I think the truckers in Canada was a big wake up, when they had all their assets frozen. I was like, okay, I have to have something in an account or, with me that I know can't be frozen. Right. So I definitely feel that need. And then, and so he called that soft despotism, right? The government, told a business to work with it, to do something, right? If they were breaking laws, just arrest them, right? But no, we're going to starve them. We're going to, cut off their supply lines. We're going to, and so how do you not rely on those supply lines? How do we remove ourselves from those things so that we can do the things we want to do and not have to worry about that?
Yeah. And I think one of the easiest ways to do that is to rely less on your bank account, which does mean rely more on cash and also more on crypto, finding avenues where you can actually use crypto as opposed to having to constantly convert it through centralized digital entities where, you do kind of leave the potential for freezing or, centralized forces to allow soft despotism to, kind of take root against you, I guess.
A lot of those issues with the Canadian truckers were because a lot of those cryptos weren't on decentralized entities.
Well, there was kind of two problems. They froze all of the actual USD contributions in the bank accounts and stuff that were going to the truckers. And then because of that, the truckers started and whatnot. Bitcoin was kind of the thing that people were using. But in a lot of cases, they were using centralized exchanges.
Coinbase,
and then those got frozen.
Yeah.
So there's kind of the double whammy wake-up call about centralization across the board, both in crypto and in USD.
Mm-hmm. Matt, something that you were talking about really kind of resonated with me in that when we go to a restaurant and we trust the restaurant, or we go to a business because we trust the business, a lot of times it's because there's a lot of other people that trust the business in the same way. I think a lot of times would depend on what a lot of times when I go to a restaurant or a new restaurant, I will check the Google reviews just to see what other people have been saying about it. Because if I want to go, I want to have a good experience. And I wonder if like that's a similar situation that we're seeing resonate at a global level with crypto and decentralization in general, is that there's more and more positive reviews of being able to interact financially with crypto as opposed to fiat, but we're just not there yet. And until we get to a point where the reviews are enticing enough for individuals to start to interact with each other on a peer-to-peer level using crypto, I think that's the growing pain that has to kind of, push through to really make an impact from a financial standpoint, is having those quality reviews of doing it with people. So like one of my things was like I really wanted to set up a service-based business using BitPay as one of the options for people to pay me to do that, to do a service, and just to have it as an option. And I think that like until those options, and the thing is like you have the Stripes of the world and all your payment processing companies want nothing to do with that. But until we see more of that open up at a retail level and at like just a regular online purchase level, like with my Amazon order, I don't know if we're going to necessarily see it yet. But at a peer-to-peer level and an actual like, people letting their friends know like, hey, like I've been moving money via Bitcoin to my other friend here, and we don't get taxed as much as we do on other platforms. So you get what I'm saying? Like there's a review component that has to be enticing to individuals to want to do that and interact with each other at a financial level. That's just something that I was thinking about.
I think there's two sides to that. So what you're saying is there's I do think adoption can happen kind of at a grassroots level as people start using it and they use it with each other and they kind of show each other how to use it, which is good. That's kind of the good way to see adoption. But then the other way that's effective, the effective way to see adoption is the truckers in Canada, or I mean, where we started off in Nigeria, where they have, that's from the government. There's limits on how much cash they can withdraw, and so you just see. I think I don't know. I don't want to be pessimistic about this, but I don't think we'll see adoption at a national level until we start to see more things like that at a national, in our nation, right? If someone's going to get their assets frozen, they're going to get restricted, and people who identify with whatever, whoever that person is who got restricted, they'll start to think about it. And the more that happens, I think, I think we'll see more adoption because of need.
That's what 100%. I'm saying. We need more hard things to happen before it really pushes people to do it. I firmly believe that, and I know that's very cynical, but I kind of think it's true.
I don't hope for hard things. I don't foresee big adoption without a need.
Crypto adoption terrorists.
Yeah, no, don't make the need. No. No, if you want to get,
it's not always like the classic like villain stance, like this had to be done. Like I didn't want to do this, but
jeez.
Don't do it. You're hearing it here. Don't do it. Don't force adoption. Encourage adoption. Peer to peer, like Branden said.
Yeah.
Send your friend Bitcoin. Make him adopt it that way.
It's just so tough because big crypto marketing, like, looking back at the Super Bowl last year, that couldn't have been a more worse way to promote people to get into crypto than all of those ads. It's like, it just kind of sits with me like all these people got into crypto just to get burned and flew too close to the sun, and look what happens.
Yeah,
I'm a victim of it too, so I'm not calling myself righteous in this department either. Like I thought that some of these platforms were incredible, like BlockFi, Voyager, etc. But I was wrong, and that's why I'm more prone to be pro Bitcoin now than other cryptos. And I'm not a Bitcoin maxi by any stretch, but I've just appreciated Bitcoin a lot more the past year as opposed to other cryptocurrency projects.
Well, what it really comes down to is incentives, I feel like, because
Yep.
I have noticed that a lot. Like looking at what is drawing people into the ecosystem, and you can kind of like, I feel like, determine a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. I don't fully know what I'm saying, but you can almost you want people to be drawn to crypto because of certain incentives, and other people coming into crypto because of other people. Oh, this is great because it drives adoption. Yeah, but it drives adoption for what reason? And is this really the people that we need in this ecosystem at this moment? Because and that's what it is with Bitcoin. I would say maybe 80% of the people that own Bitcoin are there because they want decentralized money. They don't like the Fed. They want, immutable, things can't be changed. Nobody can touch my assets. Those are the types of people that are in Bitcoin. And other projects kind of draw a lot of people that are there because of potential to make money. People who are always looking for a way to make a quick buck. NFT
Community.
people who, there's a lot of financial incentives there as well. But also just people that are there for just different incentives, right? And that was kind of, I don't know. I don't want to get too into the weeds, but I was just noticing with the whole Brantley situation. I wrote an article about that because what you notice in Web3, and Brantley kind of brought this up in his talk, but it's almost like what happened to him signified how actually a lot of people were into crypto because of libertarian stances and wanting to create systems that were decentralized, and then with kind of NFTs and whatnot, you had these other people that were entering crypto for very different reasons, and were kind of didn't really have the libertarian mind. They like Web3 because of the idea of DAOs and inclusiveness and everybody can participate kind of mentality, which is sometimes attracts people who maybe have a little bit of different political leanings. And so you kind of had that war play out. But you also had that war play out between Bitcoin and Ethereum, when now Ethereum's attracting a lot of people who are after DeFi and financial incentives, whereas Bitcoin is still very much protected in its kind of bubble of anti-government, anti-Fed stances. I rambled a lot with that one. I don't know if you guys followed
No,
that.
well, I mean, Connor, I get what you're saying. Like, honestly, like I came into crypto, come for the profits, but I'm staying now for the values that crypto stands for. And I think that that's something that when people get into crypto, and I'm like, people that actually get into it, like, and actually like look at what's going on and what's being built. If you look at the whole of that, it's something that's admirable and a lot more convicting than the infrastructure that we have been surrounded by, at least in my lifetime. And it gives everybody a chance as opposed to other investment avenues.
Yeah.
And you can learn to code. You can learn to do things with it that you can't really do with other things. It's truly a new frontier. Like, it's truly the Wild West, and I think that's ultimately why, like, obviously, like I said, I came because I saw profit potential, but now I'm staying because there's so much more to it than what I came into it for. So, yeah. Decentralization being one of those things.
Cool.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I can agree. I feel like, and it is the question, right? Because if a lot of people come in for talking the wrong reasons, right? If people come into profit or day trade, they don't like, then they're on an exchange because that's where you can do that. And then they, don't even think about taking their stuff off the exchange. But no, I agree. I think there's good things that crypto can offer. And I hope that, people take advantage of those and use them before we need to use them. I hope people adopt it before we need to adopt it. And
But also to your point of just decentralization, like I feel like that's a much better adoption curve when it happens in a very decentralized manner. Like you said, people noticing, somebody else who is maybe getting blacklisted or their accounts get frozen, and that's driving them to start to take an interest in these things, and now they're adopting crypto because of that. You kind of have this slow adoption curve. Things that happen in Nigeria are causing people to pick up crypto. Because I mean, you really think about it. Like I've thought about this. If I was president, like how would you even go about like transitioning to something so radical as like, okay, we're going to Bitcoin now, and all of a sudden the US like stock market, all financial markets just crash at once, and like you just totally wreak havoc on society. Like you can't do that, so you need this very decentralized adoption curve to happen.
It's nuts how closely tied the the government is to all of it, isn't it?
well, if they print the money and everything's
True.
valued in money,
I know. It's just crazy to me. So, yeah.
All
Well,
right, close us
I
out.
think yeah. I think on that note, yeah, I think we covered the topic of decentralization as well as we could, and I guarantee we're going to have more of these conversations in the future too, because the value of decentralization, although it's not like 100% Christian, there's still some parallel with decentralization and a Christian culture to certain extents. We want to trust our brothers and sisters, but we also want to have our privacy and our property and our autonomy at the same time.
Well, it's just
So,
particularly like I wouldn't say like there's nothing Christian about decentralization. It's like money. Money is a tool, and decentralization is a tool. Like this is something that's
okay.
good for us to use, especially given the situation that we're in now. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think at any point in history, if when you're under persecution from a government or regime, you'd like for ways to kind of remove yourself a little bit from it. So I
Okay.
definitely think it could be used by Christians
So,
for Christian reasons. It could also be used by non-Christians for non-Christian reasons. It's a
all
tool.
right. Decentralization is a tool. All right. I like how we ended that.
Sure.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening, watching, wherever podcasts are found. Like, comment, review, subscribe, download, unsubscribe, resubscribe. We appreciate it. It all helps. Appreciate you taking the time. We'll be coming back with another awesome episode next week. And hopefully, we can start integrating more awesome topics and people into the shows the next couple of episodes as we continue down this journey of the crypto conversion and this project, the Crypto Conversion Podcast. So, again, thank you everybody that's taking your time, and hope we provided some value for you. And with that being said, have a great rest of your day. Peace.